How explosive was last week's AEW Dynamite show fights? I don't know. Guys, I have never watched wrestling. I'm completely clueless and decided to go in and watch this to talk about it with two great gentlemen, old friends of mine. If you haven't been able to tell yet from clicking on what you're listening to, this is Systematic Geekology. We are the Priest to the Geeks. I'm Joshua Knoll. I just watched wrestling for the first time last week. I watched the AEW Dynamite fight that we're here to talk about with two fantastic guys. Pastor Lance Skipper. I'll probably just call him Lance this episode because that's what I call Lance. How's it going, Lance? What you been geeking out on, man?
I'm doing great. I've been geeking out on Fortnite.
Nice.
I have a 10-year-old, so free time goes in a Fortnite, and they just released a Piccolo skin, and I've been loving it.
Very nice. Very nice. And another member of the Josh I, the great J-Force, if you will, the one and only Josh Rauschenberger. I was about to just say Josh Rosh because that's just like what we call him.
Yep.
Yeah. How's it going, man? What you been geeking out on?
Going good, man. Got like everything. I don't know. I was obsessed with Rush for a couple weeks and played the crap out of that. And I always go back to Skyrim every couple months, so I'm doing that. And
God, I love Skyrim.
Shows and movies.
Yeah, TJ had to ban me from buying more copies of Skyrim because, like, they keep updating it or coming out with like Legacy Edition or Switch Edition, and TJ's like has this whole vendetta of like the reason they haven't released the next one is because people keep buying Skyrim.
Like, stop doing it. Okay. I'm guilty. I've literally bought it on every console.
I want it on Switch so bad, but I'm like, it's just not worth getting in a fight with TJ over. But so instead, I've been geeking out on Dynamite comics. They've been doing a lot of like Disney stuff. So they got Darkwing going on, Gargoyles. Next month or the month after, they're going to be doing Scar, like the backstory of Scar from Lion King. And I'm like, you know what? Cool. Old 90s Disney comics, but like modern. I don't know. It's weird, but I'm enjoying it.
See, right when you said Dynamite, I was like, oh man, you're a fan now. You've been geeking out on Dynamite?
Well, sort of. I tried to look stuff up about it, and I'm still confused. So we're gonna jump into the episode so that I can finally be enlightened of what it was that I watched last week. Oh man. So guys, let's start here. I mentioned that I've never seen any wrestling at all. So not just AEW. I didn't even know AEW exists until we started talking. I thought all wrestling was just WWE. Thought that was it. So what are your relationships with this? Like, how far back does this go for you, Lance?
So I've been watching wrestling since 1996 with WCW. And I've watched it in some form every week, which AEW is just a piece of what wrestling has existed for 100 years. It started off in carnivals. So there's always been some type of form of professional wrestling. So 96 WCW, then WWE, then WWE killed everything. And you had about TNA and New Japan, Ring of Honor, till AEW came out in 2019. So it's fairly new.
It started in carnivals?
Pro wrestling, yeah. So originally it was a bunch of shooters, which are actual, wrestlers, and they would wrestle for about 90 minutes. And they realized, what if we wrestled, but we chose a winner, and it became a work. So they would work. People call wrestling fake. It's not fake. It's a work. And what they would do is they would basically convince you it was real, so you would pay, and they would map out who would win. They would wrestle, and then that would set up for a rematch. And then they would go around doing that, and it changed a lot over the years to now you have guys who put their hands in their pockets.
Huh. I'm already learning so much. Do you count sumo wrestling as like part of this world, or is that like a different entity?
No, it's different, but watch WrestleMania 21, you can watch a sumo match.
Fun. All right, so Josh, what's your history with this? Does it go back quite as far? Or?
Yeah, so and to let everybody know, I'm probably a good bit older than both of y'all. So I was watching it when I was a kid, like in the late '80s, like '88. I was 5 years old, and so I loved like Hulk Hogan and Junkyard Dog, and so I watched it as a kid. I didn't get really into it until like Lance, like right around 1996, when kind of like the boom happened with like the
Yeah.
NWO and DX and all that stuff. And that was when I was in middle school, and so I had like a bunch of friends, and we were all obsessed with it. And then I stopped watching it once I got to high school because it was kind of lame now, and moved over to like MMA and UFC kind of stuff because that was real and not that fake wrestling crap. But then
Hmm.
probably 2014, 15, I started getting back into it because I didn't know that WWE had their own like streaming platform. And when I found out about it, and it was like it's only $10 a month, and you get to watch like literally everything they've ever done. And they had a free trial, and it was like WrestleMania season. So I was like, well, let me do the free trial. So I watched WrestleMania, and that like kick started me back into it, and I got obsessed again. And so since then,
Hmm.
I've pretty much watched everything, and like went back. I never watched like Ring of Honor or any of like the independents, but I got more obsessed with that kind of stuff than I did with WWE. So all these AEW people and even all these WWE people these days have pretty much all come from like Ring of Honor or Impact Wrestling or like
Yeah.
these smaller
PWG.
events. So
Hmm.
yeah, I've been watching, and sometimes, and probably a lot of wrestling fans can testify to this, that sometimes you just watch it because you've been watching it for your whole life, even though it's crap. And most people will be like, "Well, stop watching it if you hate it so much," but you just that's just what you do.
Yeah. And it could get good.
Yeah, you watch all the crap for like the one segment that's really good, and then that makes it all worth it because you're like, yeah, but did you see blah blah blah?
Yeah. A
See when
lot of
the clown squirted that water in King's
That's
face?
funny. A lot of MCU fans do that these days, where they
Yeah,
complain about everything that comes out, but then they're like still watching it. I
Star.
personally still like a lot of the new stuff. Phase 4 has actually been one of my favorites, so I was like, I don't get it. I thought the shows were all awesome with like
Yeah,
the one exception. um, but I
yeah,
I think for me it was probably Doctor Who is the one where like I've been the last like 5 or 6 years I've been watching because it might be good one day again. And
yeah.
then this year we get the old director back, and I'm like, this is the year it's going to be good again. And I caught myself thinking that, and I'm like, why have I been like, why have I been watching this?
Star Wars people too. They do the same crap.
Yeah, I
Fine.
mean, we all do it. You get attached to like an IP or something, and then you stick with it.
Yeah,
Um,
you feel like it's
and
part.
honestly, go ahead.
Oh, I said you feel like it's part of you. It's part of your identity.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that happens with a lot of us in other kinds of communities too, right? You see people who just get saved, who just became a Christian, who are a part of, punk rock group or whatever else, or, really big into whatever. And that's, if it's part of your identity, it seems like that's the thing that's harder to let go of. And I'm going to throw it to Lance in a second. Even those who were part of a certain church for a long time and then started, doing theology on their own and learning stuff and realize I don't actually agree with my church on a lot of stuff. Man, is it hard to leave a community that you've been really attached to. Um, Lance, where, where do we draw the line on this? Like when it comes to like geek stuff, it's like whatever, man. If you want to keep watching it, even though you don't like it, whatever. When it comes to like your churches and communities that you were attached to as part of your identity, because like it's your family, really. Is there where is the line where I disagree too much or this is taking too much out of me? I mean, as a pastor, I feel like your perspective is probably pretty different than mine.
When it becomes toxic, when you just don't enjoy anything about it anymore.
Mhm.
That's where the line's drawn to where your enjoyment is to hate it. I know we're going to get to the show. I was not the biggest fan of the show, but there were still things that I enjoyed because, as any fandom, you want to support it. I'm not an AEW fan or WWE fan. I'm a pro wrestling fan. And as I'm a Christian. I'm not necessarily just a Pentecostal fan or a Baptist fan. I'm a Christian. So I think when your love for something is now starting to separate it and is saying, no, I exclusively like this or I exclusively hate this, then you became toxic. If you love something, you needed to support it, even though you might not like everything about it.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there, it's not the same because you're not watching when you attend church, but is there ever a time where you're like, I can't stay in this church? I mean, does that go also back to the toxicity thing?
Yeah, you got to learn. You got to learn when you're standing too close to the trees to be able to see the forest. And a lot of times you don't need to leave. You just need to disconnect yourself emotionally where you realize this thing is upsetting me. It's bothering me. Why? There's been plenty of times I have had just to step back, disconnect the emotional part, and go, why is this irritating me? And once I figure out why it's irritating me, 9 times out of 10, it's not what's going on, it's me. Sometimes with fandoms, sometimes you just gotta realize where you outgrow it and it's for the next generation and they're not writing it to the 30-year-old bald guy. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
this is, you were talking about Power Rangers a few, podcast ago. They're writing to a different generation. They're writing to a generation that was born in 2015, not to people that was born in 91. So you can still enjoy it, but just recognize they're not writing for you. And sometimes in church, they're not preaching to you. They're preaching to people that might not be saved or new converts. And you have to learn where you are the supporter and you are helping, and it's not directed towards you anymore directly.
Yeah. I'm going to make one last comment and then we can get back to the wrestling stuff, which call me out if I'm wrong. But I think there is a level where if you disagree enough theologically, different things like that, and your disagreement, you're either holding in grudges about what they're saying or you're constantly voicing things that are actually keeping the pastor from being able to shepherd the rest of the church, then it might be time for you to look at another church. But I want to put this caveat on there. I don't like that there's so many people who are, well, this offended me, so now I'm just going to the next church. And then I didn't like the pews here, so I'm going to, too many people are too quick to leave. And there are some that are not leaving when maybe they should. But I think usually the problem is you're too quick to leave.
Yeah. Well, and it gets back to you because if they're preaching the same way they've always preached, it was you were either complicit to it or you never really recognized it, and maybe you just grew, or maybe something changed in them. It always gets back, no matter what in life. When it comes down to your life, it does get to your perspective of things, and sometimes it changes and you don't recognize it anymore. And sometimes maybe it's just a season where you're off. That's why we have relationships with God where we can figure that out and, separate it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And much, what you need to do is not be like the Star Wars fans that Josh mentioned. If you're gonna leave, don't trash it on the way out. Like that's not the way to do it. Too many fans of stuff are like, oh man, I hate this. This is so great. Let me just leave it alone. Let the people who are enjoying it now enjoy it.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to talk about wrestling and those who enjoy it. So you already kind of got at. I had no idea how. Which actually, I'm gonna, because I'm still a little bit confused. I don't know how to word this correctly, so I'm trying to not be offensive about it because I know you really enjoy it. It's not that I didn't enjoy it. I'm just confused. How real is it? If that makes sense. Because some of it felt like very staged, and then some of it felt like, I think that guy actually just got his face torn up.
Yeah.
Well,
and you're probably talking about the main event, right?
God, that I was so uncomfortable. Like I was like, I don't know, is that guy like dying? Is this like staged? What is happening?
Well, I'm not going to exactly explain that. Wrestling, the difference between WWE and AEW, and when it comes down to wrestling, is WWE for a long time was basically the only type of wrestling, which is sports entertainment. AEW, they claim to be more pro wrestling, but to me, they're more untrained WWE.
Yeah.
That might get some hate, but a lot of a lot of it is kind of disjointed because like as we get to the show at one part there was a brawl between certain Christian Cage and Jungle Boy, and they were allowed to do anything they wanted. There was no security. Then later on there's security. So really it's the layout of the show that makes it confusing. The fact that you don't know what is real or what is not real, I'm not going to tell you what that was, because that is what makes wrestling enjoyable. Is you don't know where it goes from fake or real, and that is the enjoyment.
So it's kind of intentionally ambiguous, but they have picked winners,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's what you were saying earlier?
Yeah, yeah.
The
The
whole
matches are
show
predetermined.
is, yeah, the whole
Yeah.
show is laid out like it was a TV show where like
Yeah.
everything that happens is like already written.
Yeah.
Now some
Except for with AEW, the
listen
promos.
like in WWE, and I don't know if it's as much this way now for stuff we can get into, but there's somebody different in charge of what they call the creative side. But usually in WWE, they literally have a script for everybody to follow down to the T. Exactly what they want you to say, how they want you to say it. With AEW, they probably, and this is how it is more like on the independent wrestling side, where they might say, you're super pissed off at this guy because he did this, and they just kind of tell you like what's going on, and they leave them to kind of like craft or come up with their own like promos. And sometimes that's really good when you have experienced people that have been doing it for years, but a lot of times it's really bad because you get these, like Lance was saying, kind of more untrained people, because it's not just doing the moves, it's knowing how to be on TV
Yeah.
and how to speak and make it natural and not like you're literally reading off a cue card like, I will get you on Sunday, you better watch out. Like, you can see that through it,
Yeah.
that's fake as crap. But yeah,
And the purpose of wrestling is supposed to make you feel something. That's the whole purpose of it. So, whenever they do get personal, you want it to get you invested. This show,
yeah,
2 weeks from a pay per view, their pay per views are, $50 or so. So they have to convince you to spend your money to watch it. So to convince you, you have to feel like, oh, I really want to watch MJF versus Brian Danielson. And
Mm,
they're not going to say, "Hey, guy, go pay $50." They're going to say, "This is the reason you want to watch these two guys fight."
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I definitely watched it wrong for the first little bit of it because I was watching it like I watch football. If I for some reason recorded the game because I couldn't watch it live, so I'm like, oh, commercial skip. Oh, they're talking about the guy. Oh, skip that. Don't want that. And then like the fight started. I'm like, I'm clearly missing something because like
yeah. You
there was clearly a narrative of
missed
one
like,
of the guys is a bad guy,
yeah,
and I was like, this is like kind of feels like sports meets comics a little bit. Like I feel like
yeah,
I should have listened so I knew who the bad guy was.
Yeah, yeah. It is. It is a good guy versus bad guy, and that there's stories that are leading up. AEW will, and this is probably a good thing about them. They will bring stuff up that happened 3 years ago.
yeah,
Um, and if you haven't followed it, you might not get it. And there's a lot of Easter eggs. AEW is pushed towards the hardcore fans. Like in one of the matches, the guy spelled soft and he spelled it a little differently. That was a callback to 2016 WWE.
yeah,
So
Oh,
unless you watch that, that would be over your head. WWE will never do stuff like that because they're focused on the casual fans who watch once or twice a week. AEW will pull things out that happens in Mexico, in Japan, in a show with 15 people.
right.
AEW will bring that stuff up.
yeah.
Yeah,
There's one thing AEW loves to do is reference WWE.
Oh
That's
Lord.
bread and butter.
that's funny. So I have one more question before we get to like some of the meat of this. is part of the purpose, because you said you're talking about like why they watch it is like some of the story, different stuff like that. I feel like I remember one of the guys talking about someone else stole his girl and this and that happened and his whole life is wrestling now. Am I supposed to, let's say I've been through something like someone stole my girl or whatever. Am I supposed to be like relating to this guy and like kind of, I don't know, living vicariously of, yeah, I wish I could beat the crap out of a guy who did this, like, is that sort of the satisfaction or?
I think you're supposed to understand why he hates the other guy, kind of like
Kind of
I
like
don't know,
humanizing.
Batman and Joker.
Okay.
Like you have everything I want, so I want you. I want. I want to put you in a place where you can enjoy it because if I can't enjoy it, you shouldn't be able to enjoy it.
Okay. So is that like a way of like venting second party almost like I am able to feel your rage so I don't have to feel my rage almost, or is that kind of like a part of it, or am I reading too much into it?
Um,
Am I reading too much into it?
well, with what you're talking about specifically, I kind of feel like it was to like humanize, and this was MJF and Brian Danielson. It was kind of more to like humanize him because every single week MJF comes out there and he's what they call a heel. He's the bad guy, and every
Mhm.
week he runs down the people in the crowd and the city they live in, and the guy he's supposed to be fighting, and his whole thing is like shock value. So he brings in a lot of like real life things that have happened. But with this, it was kind of
Okay.
out of nowhere because you almost started to feel a little bit sympathetic for him because what he was talking about really did happen. Like he really did get engaged like 6 months ago, and I guess nobody really knew this, but apparently his fiance did leave him and all this stuff. So he brings a little bit of realism to it, and with that, I think
Huh.
it's kind of where you definitely still don't like him, but at least you kind of understand now like why he is this way.
Yeah, and it ups the stakes a little bit, I
And the
feel
guy
like.
he was talking about, Brian Danielson, he's always had like kind of like the silver spoon, so to speak. Like he's always been like legitimately like one of the best wrestlers in the world for like the last 20 years, and what he was talking about was real like really did happen. He had to retire. What was it like 2014 or 15 because of
Yeah, 2016.
concussions, and never thought he was going to get to wrestle again. Well, he finally like got doctors on his side and got cleared like 4 or 5 years ago and got to come back, and so it was just kind of
Oh man.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they one like with modern wrestling, one of the things is kind of blurring those lines between what's real and what's not, and who the good guys and the bad guys are. It's not always bad guy always does bad stuff and good guy always does good stuff. Like sometimes there's tweeners where it makes it a little bit harder to kind of tell. Like, are you really the bad guy or are you actually the good guy? And so yeah,
Yeah, and there's a lot of that on this show.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
one of the things that AEW does that gets on a lot of like old school or like purist wrestling fans because they think there's always got to be a specific good guy and a specific bad guy. So, and I'm kind of that way too, unless there's like a good reason for it,
Man, I
which
love a
it seems
relatable
like they
bad
just do
guy.
stuff just to do it, just so they can get the fans chanting "Holy sh!"
Yeah.
That's kind of like
Yeah.
all modern wrestling is. You have to up the ante so you can get fans to chant.
Hmm.
And if that
Fun
means
stuff.
stories don't make any sense, then oh well.
So with some of the stories, so is it really more like sports meets comics meets reality show? Is it kind of more like that?
It's a male opera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just sounded very amusing. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll just
Mhm.
accept that. All right. So then, Lance, this was the AEW Dynamite matches from the 22nd of February, right? Is that what
Yeah,
we watched? Yeah. You want
right.
to run us down some of what you think the highlights were?
Let's get into it.
Yeah, we're not going to get into the whole card because I don't think all of it's worth necessarily
Yeah.
talking about. But the opening match, I really want your opinion. We have a AEW All Atlantic Champion, freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy versus the ROH Pure Champion Willa Yuta. Um, this match to me is a AEW match. that I actually thought was okay. Um, I'm not the biggest fan of Cassidy, but I enjoy portions of the match. What was your opinion of Orange Cassidy, Joshua?
Yeah, so this I think was still the part where I was skipping some of the when it talks about players because I was treating it like a football game.
Mhm.
So I think I missed some key parts on this. But I did giggle when I heard freshly squeezed orange. I was like,
Yeah.
why is that part of your name? Um and then I was really thrown off because I just did not know what I was watching. I was like, how much of this is real? How much isn't? Some of it I was like, wow, that looked like some really skilled stuff. And then some stuff that like in the fight, which they all did this weird thing where it looked like they were taking their forearm and like rubbing it against the guy's face instead of punching him. And I'm like, I'm confused slightly. But also, it, I don't know, it was very fast paced for me for not like I guess also like seeing like football is really the only sport I watch, so I'm used to like you do a play, you stop, you do a play, you stop. There's no stop. They're just going at each other, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Well,
okay then.
and when you watch WWE, that will be one of the key differences.
Yeah.
So in wrestling, they call it selling, and that's giving time for things to
Sink in.
resonate. This match was 100 miles an hour.
Yep.
Um,
Yes.
one of the parts that so there's a part where Willa Yuta, Cassidy and Willer was in the best friends together, and Willer Yuta was taking a little light on him. Then Claudio came out and heated him up a bit, smacked him across the face. You probably saw that. And I think Willer did a awesome job. But then Cassidy stuck his hands in his pockets as he always does. And at that point, it just took me out of the match. What do you think, Josh?
So I thought it was pretty good. And yeah, like you said, this was like AEW loves to go ahead and start with what they would call a hot match, where to get the crowd like really into it right off the bat. And what this championship match is what they would consider what they would call a mid card champion. Like it's not the world champion, but it's like one of the lower levels. Um, and so with Orange Cassidy, his whole character is that he does the absolute bare minimum it takes to get by. Like he doesn't care. He didn't want to put any effort in unless he's forced to. And so that's why he puts his hands in his pockets all the time. Um, I don't even remember. Did he do like the little shin super kicks where they just look?
Yeah, yeah. He did the kicks between the fire up. So Yuta was hitting him with some chops and some forearms, and then a little ankle kick, and then a chop forearm ankle kick. I personally, there's certain people that like it, and I understand because if it was a few years ago, I would have loved it. I like my wrestling a little bit more serious. I don't I don't care for a lot of goofy stuff. But like my wife, I told her I was like the first match that Joshua has to watch is Orange Cassidy, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, are you serious?" So it just depends. Did you find him entertaining as someone
Yeah,
that's never watched wrestling?
I think that's part of why, which well, I'm glad we're doing this in two parts because not knowing what was going on made it a lot more difficult.
Yeah,
And I was genuinely worried with how fast it was going. I was like, man, Lance is gonna have me watch this, and by the end, my head's gonna be literally just spinning. Because I was prepared for it to just be like an hour straight of just that. um,
yeah, and that's
and then it was weird because I was like, and I think that's why I was so confused how real it was supposed to be. Because I'm like, this guy, if this is a real fight, why is he acting like he just?
right.
I don't know. Like he just acted weird for it to be a fight. Like I was like, this
Yeah,
isn't
Yeah, and that's
fighting.
where the 100 miles an hour, no one is selling the moves. That's where a lot of the pure wrestling fans, me included, like get frustrated with that because you just did, um, some crazy move where a guy got spiked on top of his head. In real life, obviously he's going to be paralyzed or probably dead, but you got to at least
mm,
pretend like it hurts you and like stay on the ground for more than two
yeah,
seconds. And then instead he pops right back up and does his own
yeah.
move. And it's just back and forth, back and forth. And again, the fans, they don't have a time or a chance to like breathe. And a lot of
Mhm.
times they'll probably miss stuff because they're going back and forth like a pinball, and they don't really even realize what just happened. And then
Mhm.
again, because the fans are so used to seeing these humongous moves that could like literally kill a person, the wrestlers feel like they have to top what somebody else did, or else they're not going to get those chants.
Yeah.
Whereas
And
WWE, like they're more character based and storyline based, but their in ring stuff, the way they train them and teach them, is to kind of slow it down a little bit. They still have a lot of high flying stuff and a lot of like big impact moves, but you see that stuff like at the end of the match when both guys are
yeah,
supposed to be tired, and that is what what they call their finisher, which is this is supposed to be the big move that you don't get up from. Instead,
yeah,
with AEW and some of the indie wrestling, it's like they call it like spamming your finisher, where everybody just does the biggest moves they can possibly do, and again, the crowd just gets lost in it because they don't know what's
yeah.
going on.
And
Yeah, that
AEW, excuse me, AEW. If I had to compare it to anything as wrestling, it's Street Fighter. It's Mortal Kombat. I don't watch it like I would watch Flair and Steamboat from the 80s or Hart and Alston, which is supposed to, it's a work sport that makes you believe it's real. When you watch AEW, I see it more as a real life video game. And that's what helps me enjoy it. I don't watch it like I would watch, you know, other wrestling from the past. A match I'm going to suggest later on. Um, it's to me, it's just Mortal Kombat. Move, 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 move. Somebody wins. When the energy bar is lowered, the match is over. And that's kind of how I watch it to enjoy it more because it's not traditional wrestling at all.
yeah, I think Lance would agree with me. They were doing some of these big impact moves and getting up, acting less angry than Lance and I disagreeing about the AC as children at church camp. Like I'm
Yeah,
like I've seen us get more angry literally about the temperature in a cabin. Like,
They're too worried
come
about
on.
the move they're going to do next and not what just happened to them.
Yeah.
And that, to
yeah.
me, and let me ask you this: did you feel like when you saw those fast paced, like, did it feel more like it was like cooperative gymnastics to you? Like,
No, because I still wasn't sure how real it was. So I think that made it a little bit easier to buy in for a minute. And then I was like, wait a minute.
yeah,
That doesn't seem right.
Yeah,
So it's just kind of, I was still kind of finding my grounding, I feel like, during this first fight, trying to understand
yeah.
kind
Are
of the
y'all
beat
ready?
of what I was watching.
Y'all
Yeah.
ready to move on to the next segment?
yeah. You want to give
Is
that segment or that match like a number grade, or you just want to talk about it?
we can what would y'all grade the Orange Cassidy Willer Yuta match? Scale 1 out of 10.
I probably would have gone with like a 6.
I don't have enough to compare it to, so I'm just going to let you guys do the ratings.
Well, your grade can be from the first time you've ever seen it. So 1, I wish I never watched that. 10, I loved it. I would watch it again.
I'll
0.
give it a 7. I was just very overwhelmed. So I would probably watch it again just because
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't quite grasp what happened.
Okay.
Once we get done, what I want to do too is like maybe send you some YouTube links of some highlights of some of these people so you can kind of see like their backstory. And because I
Yeah.
actually with this will be the last thing I say about the Orange Cassidy. I like his old stuff better, but his gimmick,
Hmm.
which is his character, I don't think it works long term in like one of these big pro wrestling promotions. Like
Yeah.
what he was doing on the Independents, where he might be in Boston, wrestling for Beyond Wrestling on Tuesday night, and then on Friday
Mhm.
he's down in Florida. That works a lot better because those people only see him, once every however many months, and so he can play that character up a little bit more. Like there's a match that I want to link to you. It's him versus a character called Jervis, Gentleman Jervis Cottonbelly, and it's for a wrestling promotion called Wrestle Circus, and that's like what they specialize in
Hmm.
is the goofy, crazy. It's a hilarious match, but it like
Fun.
encapsulates like his whole character with the whole like I'm not trying, I'm just doing barely like the bare minimum. So I'll have to send you that later so you can see like where all that kind of stems from.
Yeah. I feel like thinking of them as characters will probably help a lot too. Like,
Yeah,
I
like
like that word.
eventually he's gonna get forced to like really what they say go, and he is good in the ring. Like when he's trying, he's very skilled in what he does, but it's just he just can't play that character for very long in like this type of a setting. So
Yeah.
Well, next segment we have the Brian Danielson MJF promo, which there's things about it I didn't necessarily care for, but I think overall I have been waiting for a reason to want to see these two guys wrestle.
yes,
And I believe that both guys just had a heck of a promo to get you wanting to see those two fight. Um, MJF coming off a little sympathetic, as y'all said. He came off a little sympathetic, but then he looks at the camera and talks trash about the guy's children, talking to the children of. So, how sympathetic are you if you're going to talk trash about, as he said, I'm going to punch your dada in the face. And to me, that is what a good villain is. You have to be able to relate just a little bit. So when they push it the extra level, then you go, okay, you lost me. Like I understood why you did it, but then you lost me. A
no,
great example, Darth Vader in Star Wars. You understand his loss, but then he took it a step beyond to the point where it's like, man, I felt what you were going through, Anakin, but why did you have to go that far? That's what MJF did.
Yeah, I again, I think this is the part where I was kind of getting the feel of like, at the very least, this is definitely dramatized because it
Yeah.
didn't feel like the same kind of acting you get on like some like high production shows like The Last of Us or anything like that, where I'm like, okay, this is a extra dramatized, whether it's real or not. It's definitely dramatized. um, and yeah, I don't know, man. I was like, okay, so this guy is the bad guy, but he's not all bad. It felt like he was playing out that saying hurt people," right? Where I'm like, okay, so he's
yeah,
hurt, so he wants to hurt other people. Kind of gave me like a Killmonger vibe almost, you know,
mm-hmm.
where I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I totally understand why you hate the world, but also someone's got to stop this guy.
Which he was being himself. This is the beauty about wrestling. He was being himself. I'm sure everything he said about the girl was probably pretty much true, but he turned it up to 10. And that is, Josh will agree with me. Stone Cold Steve Austin was Stone Cold Steve Austin, just turned up. And
Yeah,
that is the best kind of wrestler. When you're not playing when you're not playing a character, you are a character. And being in church, we met a lot of characters. That is who they are, and that's the beauty about it. Is I don't think anything he said was scripted. I think he just went out there and said it, and he meant it, and he
yeah.
believed it, and it just turned up.
Yeah,
And that's what I was
which
saying with like the people that are good at it can do that without a script. And MJF, he's like legitimately like probably the best like on the mic wrestler maybe today, and if not the one, like top two or three. And like Danielson, he's good on the mic too, but I think his job in that case was just to let MJF go and what they call get heat, where you just get the crowd madder and madder at you, and like Lance was saying, he threw in that little sliver of like
Mm,
realism to kind of get you caring about him, and then switched it back on him again by talking about Danielson's kids, and now the crowd was like, yeah, I see why you're like that, but I hate you again. And to me,
yeah,
this
Yeah.
was like the best part of the whole show.
yeah.
And
Part of it too
they,
kind of gave off
they
like,
got into a brawl, but it wasn't a match.
Yeah. But the fans, I do want to point this out because the fans in AEW, where they're different from WWE, when he was talking about losing his girlfriend, wife, fiance, they were chanting, "You deserve it."
Yeah.
yeah, that was gross.
And that is listen, AEW fan finds this,
And
you're
look,
going to experience some real heat because they are vicious.
yeah.
They are vicious.
I don't know. Part of it too, the way he was like dramatizing it, also kind of gives off the vibe of like, like the new person at work or new person at school who's like extra playing the character that they are.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
extra being yourself so that everybody knows who you are.
yeah.
Yeah,
And it's like, oh, okay, cool.
So what would y'all rate that segment 1 out of 10?
I'll let y'all go first. I don't really know yet.
I give it a 8. I give it an 8. I feel like it was solid, but more importantly, you have to have a reason to want to watch them wrestle. And I think that this put a little gasoline on the fire to get some excitement for that match because they're going to wrestle in a hour long Iron Man match. So you
Yeah.
have to have a little heat to watch someone wrestle for an hour.
And what
Yeah,
that
and
means is they're going to wrestle for 60 minutes straight, and whoever has the most like pinfalls or submissions at the end of that 60 minutes will win. So it's not just like
oh wow,
one pinfall. It's so they'll probably be like two or three or four. And the way wrestling always goes, it'll probably come down to that last minute. They'll be tied at like
Mhm.
three, and then somebody will
Or
get one, or yeah,
or none, and like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, you can go into overtime
yeah,
and wrestle for a whole hour with no pinfalls and have 5 more minutes to see who can win it.
yeah,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. What did you think about
I
it?
don't know. I'd probably also do an 8. I think it was one of the most entertaining parts for me, just thinking of like the psychology behind it all and like kind of the build up. And I was like, almost like some movies, the trailer's honestly more fun than the movie, And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm digging this. I'm digging the build up. So that
I
was
like
fun.
that you brought up the word psychology because that is definitely a wrestling term that they like to use for like stuff like that, like the how and the why behind like why you're doing stuff, and that's another thing that a lot of the indie or more modern wrestlers don't really focus on that much is the psychology of it. Because again, it's
Yeah.
just go out there and do as many moves as you can. So yeah, but yeah, I'd probably say like 8.5, 9, somewhere around in there too. Because I feel like MJF is usually the highlight of the whole company, and
Yeah,
when CM Punk is around. Like the
said
two
not
of
named
them,
CM
they
Punk.
like they're not gonna let what they do be crappy. So even if that
Yeah.
means they just drag the other guy along and make them like have a good match or a good feud, then they're not gonna like just settle
Yeah.
like our man Chris Jericho.
No. We're skipping Jericho. The next match, to me, which is the most hilarious match of the night. This thing had me laughing at work. The Revolution Tag Team Battle Royale. Uh, a battle royale, the rules is you start in the ring, you get thrown over the top rope, you are eliminated, the last person in the ring wins. The only difference with this AEW match is most of the competitors was not in the ring.
Right?
They were getting in and out of the ring, and people were helping from the outside, and they had a promo segment, and then everyone was outside of the ring, and they just flooded into the ring in a cluster. They did not announce one tag team. They did not let anyone know. It was like watching a tornado in a trailer park. It was chaos. What was y'all's thoughts
I'm
on this
sure
beautiful
you're
match?
confused at the very beginning of the show. You were probably really confused on this, especially when they didn't announce who anybody was or what was even going on.
Yeah. I was very much hoping that y'all would say something about this before I had to say anything about my thoughts on it. So recently we did a review of the Three Caballeros, the old Disney film, and the end of the film is just literally just nonsense, random shapes and stuff on the scene. I still like it. It's like good vibe. This was a lot like that, where it just felt like random, like I don't know what's going on here, but without the good vibe, like there was no vibe at all. I was like, this just seems like I wasn't supposed to see this. It seems
Yeah,
honestly, it felt stupid to me. Like I was like, this is dumb. Like what is happening?
almost like you caught a glimpse of everybody training like on an off day.
Yeah,
They're all in the ring at the same time. They're just like doing moves to each other and helping each other
yeah.
out. Yeah,
or like in front of the White House or something. It was just like a riot.
I love
this
Battle Royal.
match,
Make that joke.
Like the Royal Rumble is by far like my favorite pay per view of the whole year. But that has a little bit more structure to it. One, and it's not tag team, so there's not 75 guys in the ring at the same time. There's only 40. Yeah, it was crazy. And then
this
one of the notes that I put is that I was glad to see Jeff Jarrett, or no, I was glad to see AEW putting over younger talent like Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal, which is sarcasm because both of those guys have been wrestling for like 30 years.
I have no issue with that. I love Jeff Jarrett and I love Jay Lethal. This match, and Josh is going to know what I'm talking about, Josh Ross. This had TNA Reverse Battle Royal
Yeah.
vibes. TNA was a promotion that Jeff Jarrett founded and booked, where everyone started on the outside, and the goal was the first people in the ring wins the match, and then they have to throw each other out the ring after getting in the ring. This, yeah, I've been watching wrestling a while. I've never seen a battle royal like this. I
Do it again
don't know.
night.
Yeah, we're gonna have a second one.
Name.
Yeah, so Jarrett and Lethal won the match, so now they're entered into a four-way at Revolution. My thing, this is a hat on a hat, as Cornette would say. Why are we doing all this? It was a lot. I give this match from, on the level of stupid, it's a 10. On the level of actually enjoying it and wanting to show someone this, I'm sorry this was your first time watching it. I would give it a 2.
I wouldn't show anybody that, especially not their first time.
No.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 3, 4, because there were some funny like spots. And one thing I will say, I love the Butcher and the Blade, and I wish they would have won. I feel like they're getting buried, but yeah, I know they're not. They're not
Brother, they've been buried.
Yeah.
Yeah. First number that popped in my head was a 3, but that really feels generous. Just because it wasn't fun. It was just dumb.
Yeah, it was embarrassing. And the whole point of this podcast is not exactly what me and Josh would like because we've been wrestling forever. But if you think it's dumb, you are the person that they're trying to win because you don't watch their program, right? Like they want to grow and get more viewers. So if you walk around saying that was dumb, then it was dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad y'all felt that way too. I was like, I really hope this isn't like secretly why Lance watches it or something because I was like, I hated that.
That's like
I fast forward a lot of it. Sorry.
That's like those stuff where wrestling fans are embarrassed to say they're wrestling fans. Like if your roommate in college walks in and sees you watching that, and you like turn the TV real quick to like Monday Night Football. I wasn't watching wrestling. That was the kind of stuff that was.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like all the people who got introduced to Doctor Who during the Nexus event thing that they did like last year or something, and I was like, "Dear God, I'm sorry." Like, just sorry.
We have 2 more segments of this show, and the next one, Joshua, I'm really looking forward to your opinion on this. Tony Khan had a massive announcement that Tony Khan did not make. He announced the announcer for the announcement. Tony Khan is the owner of this company.
Yeah, let's get your thoughts first.
He announced that they are having a television show after their television show talking about the making of their television show. Are you interested as a non-wrestling fan watching how wrestling is made?
Yeah, this felt like a non-announcement. This felt like when a politician is like, man, I have an announcement, and my announcement is so much better than the other guy's announcement. My announcement is excellent. And it's like, what was the announcement? Like, okay.
Yeah.
It's like the announcement is, I'm going to keep doing this, but without the fun part. And I'm like, okay.
Right. There's a whole meme in the internet wrestling community about anytime Tony Khan says he has a special announcement that it's going to be like, I just saved 15% or more on my car insurance by switching to Geico. It's that level every single time. Like nothing. It's never a big announcement. It's always dumb stuff.
He announced the purchase of a company before he purchased the company.
Yeah, and it almost came
Wow,
out to bite him.
that's funny.
I'm still pissed
I
off about that
see.
because Ring of Honor deserves better. Dang it!
This is like the weirdest thing. That this is like where you shouldn't have expectations, I guess. But I heard an announcement, and I do know because I do more video games than anything that there's supposed to be a wrestling video game coming out, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, maybe he's gonna announce that. That'd be cool.
Right,
And
like
then it was
maybe the
like
release
it's
date.
a
I would
show
actually
about the
enjoy
show,
this.
and I'm like, oh,
And I hate that. I like wrestling. I want as much of it to be kept a secret as possible because when I watched it as a kid, I didn't know anything, and it just makes it more enjoyable. Um, to me, do you really want to know how the sausage is made? You really want to know that they use butts and snouts? And to me, that's what this is. Like, why would you? So it's almost like if David Copperfield was like, "Let me show you this trick." So now let me explain to you this trick.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
let the trick be the trick.
Now I will say though, and I know nobody in the world would ever care about this, but there was a year where they did a behind the scenes like catching up with the Florida State Seminoles in college football, and I watched that and I enjoyed it, knowing that there's like a very limited audience for that. So I was like, yeah, maybe it could be something like that. I don't know. I don't know.
yeah. I To me the bigger announcement was the fact that Adam Cole is coming back to actually wrestle because he's one of my favorites. And
Yeah,
his whole thing is he got a concussion back last summer in a match, and like legitimately thought that he might not ever get to wrestle again because he just had the symptoms for so long. And then what, maybe a month ago, he just randomly like showed up on Dynamite and everybody lost their stuff. And but he never got physical. He just got in the ring and cut promos. And he's another one that's like, but he's one that he's really good on the mic and really good in the ring. But people make fun of him because he's not like the biggest guy in the world. But he's one of my favorite wrestlers, like legitimate. So I thought that was the announcement for me. So that's what I'm going to go with.
yeah. And the main event. Before we get there, a few things that happened. We had a Chris Jericho, Ricky Starks, weird
Yeah,
switcheroo contract signing. And then we had Christian and Jungle Boy attacking Christian, and then Christian getting the upper hand, which is dumb. Why would you attack someone and then end up getting beat up? But that leads to the main event, which is John Moxley versus Dark Order's Evil Uno. Joshua, what did you think about your main event?
I man, I was really hoping y'all to answer first. I was deeply uncomfortable. I had a lot of fun for a while. Like I was like, okay, this is cool. They're going back and forth. Then, sorry, I'm bad with names. I think is Evil Uno's the one with the mask, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
He started bleeding, and my thought was like, okay, he probably had some like fake blood packets in the mask or whatever. So I was kind of like trying to assume that it was fake blood. And then it got wild. And then by the end of it, some dude with a cowboy hat or something comes in with a fistful of barbed wire and starts punching the other guy. And I'm like,
yeah,
that's not fake blood. And that's where I was like, I don't know. It made me like, I was like, I don't
and
know,
we're
man.
not going to
I wasn't
explain
sure.
how they did it either. We're not going to explain how they did it.
well, I was about to, but I'll
I
go.
know you were.
So
Okay.
You can explain it,
cowboy
Josh
hat.
Ross.
I'll give you the context of what all happened. Like, so the dude with the cowboy hat, he and John Moxley are like in a feud together. So they're about to have what they call a Texas death match at the pay per view.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, I heard that.
Uno is friends, supposed friends with Hangman, Adam Page. They're in a group together called the Dark Order, which so
Which Hangman is kind of in it, kind of not. The Hangman thing is he's a depressed
of depressed.
former alcoholic who has hard times developing relationships.
But yeah,
Okay.
so and another meme in wrestling right now is the fact that John Moxley bleeds in literally every match he has. So I wrote a note to myself like, when was the last match that John Moxley did not bleed in? And I couldn't find that, but I did find people on Twitter from August of 2022 saying, "Why does John Moxley bleed so much?" So he's been doing it for like almost a full year. Like I can't remember the last match he had where he didn't bleed. And that's one of those things where less is more. Like blood in wrestling is supposed to be something like special and shocking, like what they call a blood feud. Like it's supposed to be saved for like that feud where the guys you just know they hate each other. Like the Texas Death Match, that would be a great place for blood. But that'll be like the 53rd week in a row that there's been blood. Where if you just did
Yeah.
it once a year, then everybody's gonna be like, "Oh my god, did you see that? Like they were bleeding in the match and blah blah." Blah. They bleed in the match every single time now, so it's not special anymore.
And
That's
Evil
that's what I hate about them.
and Evil Uno, I cannot tell you the last time he was even on the show.
Yeah, it's just random.
Um,
Like, let's put him.
there's better, yeah, there's better Dark Order members that could, Alex
Unbelievable.
Reynolds or.
The mask looked cool though.
I'm glad you think
He's got
so.
cool man.
Fun fact.
He's a big
Fun
old
fact.
chubby dude that unathletic, can't do nothing.
He made me think of Jack Black.
Mm.
Kinda.
Well, the fun fact about Evil Uno, his original name, tag team name, is a Nintendo reference. His name, their tag team name was Super Smash Bros.
That's
He used to
funny.
call player Uno.
Yep.
He had like a
Funny.
little Nintendo like controller on his mask and
Man,
stuff.
it'd
But,
be way more fun.
yeah,
I
they couldn't use that
yeah,
for
I don't know what
copyright reasons, so they had to change their name.
that makes sense.
And then like his tag team partner got released like a year ago, so he's just been kind of like there all by himself. So
Weird.
yeah, it's been weird.
Yeah, I don't know why, because so I mentioned, football's the only sport I watch, and I've been wrestling with it for a long time. The idea that a lot of people do get seriously injured, ruins their lives sometimes. It's like, is it okay that I'm watching this? So I think that's probably sitting in the back of my head, and I'm watching some of these moves that I'm not sure if are real or not, or how real they are, and I'm like, that guy could have killed that guy stomping his head into this, and then all of a sudden there's blood everywhere, and I'm like, what am I watching? But it's funny though, because like I'll watch like war movies and stuff. I guess it's like the ambiguity of how real it is what makes me uncomfortable. I'm not
Yeah,
sure, but I was like,
like
I don't know.
that movie is not actual blood. Like
Yeah,
in Saving Private Ryan, like those actors didn't really die these
yeah,
brutal deaths, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that was
And these guys really did bleed. It was
that
real
was real.
blood.
There's ways that they do it to where it's supposed to be safer. I don't know. Should we just talk about it? You want to keep
What
it secret?
what they do, Joshua, is they have a small razor blade that they wrap in athletic tape. They either put it in their mouth, put it in their wristband, put it in their trunks. What they do is after they get hit, they take the blade and they cut their foreheads, and it's called a blade job.
It's real small. It's supposed to be a really
uh,
small cut, like maybe a couple centimeters. But I guess the veins in your head, like I guess when your
Mm,
heart starts beating heavy, it's supposed to like gush out
yeah,
more and make it look worse than it's
yeah.
supposed to
okay.
be. But
Now, Judgment Day 2004, Eddie Guerrero versus JBL. Guerrero hit a artery, and it looked like Friday the 13th. It was the nastiest looking thing, and he had to go to the hospital to do it. But that's a bit of how the magic's made. Feel dirty telling you, but man,
Yeah.
might as well
So
catch out the bag.
and what's even
they don't
cringy?
bleed every match though. Like that's actually not normal.
No, they should only bleed during the big matches.
Yeah, it's supposed to
Uh,
be saved for like special occasions. But
yeah.
Moxley literally bleeds on TV every single week, and you're just like, dude, why? Why are you doing this? Like it's a contract signing. Why did you just cut your forehead? Like you're supposed to be sitting there signing a piece of paper, and he goes, "Shh," just so he can bleed.
You needed some ink, man.
Like they
Uh,
literally caught him on camera like 2 or 3 weeks ago. He was sitting up against the turnbuckle, and the camera pointed to him while he was cutting his head. I'm like, dude, why are you sitting up where everyone can see you? Like usually they'll fall over and put their hand
Oh,
like
that's
over their
funny.
head like that and just kind of like sneak it. But he's
mm,
literally just sitting up like this, like I am, and
mm.
you don't even
So
care anymore, dude.
do you this is just out of curiosity, because like I never was around this culture enough to know. Like I know I get flack for watching Harry Potter from church people. Do you ever get flack like from church people for watching like this violent sport or anything like that, or do they not care?
It's reverse. We get flack from everybody because it's fake.
Yeah.
Um,
It's almost like
Sounds
so
more
church
annoying.
people are like, it's almost like they don't even know, like they think it's so dumb and like children. I'm sure like if they saw some of that stuff, they'd be like, "Why are you watching this?" But they probably still think it's you know
it's so
Yeah.
mid
silly to them.
WWF where you had Ultimate Warrior like running around, or
Yeah,
they probably
I've
like children's base. I don't know.
yeah, I've literally went to a store. I collect wrestling DVDs. I probably have over 1,000 of them. And I was buying a wrestling DVD, and the store clerk looked at me and said, "Don't you know that's fake?" while selling it to me. Um, the thing about it, and as I told them, I said, "What's your favorite movie?" They said, "Lord of the Rings." I said, "Isn't? Don't you know that's fake? All of this stuff is fake. It's television." So church wise, I've gotten insults. I was at a camp, a certain camp we all know, and I had a Bullet Club shirt, and I was the evangelist. They have guns on it. I was told I shouldn't be wearing that. Or the NWO shirt that says New World Order. I've gotten, don't you know that's the New World Order?
Illuminati
But
stuff.
that's not really, to me, it wasn't wrestling. It was more or less ignorance of not understanding what it was from.
Yeah,
So most of the irritation comes from everyone constantly telling you it's fake.
Yeah,
that
like they're
does
breaking
sound
the
annoying.
news. You know, Santa Claus isn't real. What?
Wait, hold up now.
Oh, my bad.
So I watched that. I watched that Fred Claus movie for nothing.
Yeah, he has a brother and everything.
I thought I was documentary, man.
So Joshua, I have a question. By what you watched tonight, would you ever, outside of a podcast, whatever, would you consider watching AEW again?
Probably not, but mostly because honestly, it's a little inconvenient to find, and I just have so many other things that I'm watching that I'm like, man, I could just watch Mandalorian over and over,
Mhm.
like watch How I Met Your Mother for the 1 millionth time. But that just, I think
So
it's more just a difference of taste than
so
anything. I don't feel like it was because it was bad.
so they didn't do a good job winning you over.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if I'm like the target audience because I don't really watch a ton of sports either. But I don't know. But
Well,
yeah, no.
So
well,
final grade for the show. What do y'all give it? I give this show a 6,
um,
which is probably nice.
I'm
No,
gonna say
it's nice. It's a 5.
yeah, I'm gonna say 5 because there's a lot of terrible crap that we didn't go over that really drags it down, like the women's match. That's the one thing. Another thing about AEW, their women are absolutely dreadful, hideous, terrible. Um,
Yeah, I was
some are
like,
way
it's
untrained. They like botch their moves a whole lot. Like it doesn't look smooth. It looks all herky jerky and like disjointed. And yeah, I don't like their women
yeah,
at all. There's maybe like two or three good female wrestlers in AEW that I would consider like or that I want to watch. But for the most part,
yeah,
no. I usually
yeah. I'm
I don't usually skip it, but I just don't pay attention.
I do.
Well, today I skipped it.
I'm
I already knew what
That's funny.
happened. But
No, I'm a big fan of empowering women, including women more in things, diversity, all that kind of stuff. But I was like, man, this really feels like, oh, we need to have some women here. And you just got whoever you could find. Like it felt like you didn't try. And I was like, that's
Mm,
just so much worse than just not including women. Like that was just
mhm.
so much
yeah.
worse.
And there are good women wrestlers, which I would say Impact Wrestling and even WWE has really good women
Yeah.
wrestling. Really good. AEW, you can just tell that they do it because they have to. Um, it just isn't good.
And I think one thing to or that's important to note is that um, I mean, AEW doesn't really have a training system. Like they do, but they don't. Like WWE has a whole other show that they run called NXT, which is all of their like newer people that they're kind of giving them on the job training, and they're also showing them like how to be on TV and all this kind of stuff. Well, AEW doesn't really have that. They have a gym, like a wrestling school that one of their guys runs, but that's like literally all they do. And you can tell like there's some brand new people in WWE NXT that have never like they don't have wrestling backgrounds, like they came from gymnastics or whatever, and they're already like 3 times better than most of the AEW women that you're going to see on TV every week. So it's just yeah, and I don't know if they don't want to train them up like that, or I don't even know. I don't really know the reason, but
Good to know. No,
it sucks.
I think I'd probably give it a 7, but that's more of a. There was a lot. It was really new to me. I was very overwhelmed, and I am genuinely excited to watch WWE and kind of have a better idea of what's going on.
Yeah,
So I feel like it'll be a different experience once I know what's happening, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Oh
WWE
yeah.
they'll hold your hand a little bit more and explain things
Oh,
to you,
good.
whereas AEW they're going off the assumption that you already know what's going on, so they don't
Yeah.
really take the time to explain stuff as well. Like shoot on WWE, you'll get a this
Yeah.
just happened moments ago, like 10 times during the show.
Yeah.
They over explain things, but
AEW's Dark Souls.
Uh,
They
no,
just throw you in there and you got to figure it out.
yeah, it's like my college advisor who was like asking me what classes to sign up for, and somehow I got signed up for biodiversity very first semester. I grew up in Christian schools. The only thing I was taught about evolution is that it's wrong. I did not do well in that class, like, at all. I had no idea what was going on.
if everybody came from monkeys, how come I don't see no monkeys changing into people today?
Yeah, clearly they've never seen a picture of me. Self deprivation, the best kind of humor. Was there
Just
anything
watch
else?
2 hours of it.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
it's not
Anything
like
else you guys wanted to add before we jumped into wrapping this one up?
No, I'm good. That was it.
yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I look forward to hopefully next week we could talk about this Friday's WWE match. I assume this Friday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay, so that'd be March 3rd, I think.
Yep.
So, guys, hang in there for that. Um, welcome to the wrap up where we give everybody a recommendation. I know that Lance said he had some he was waiting to give. So, what's up?
So, modern wrestling, if you are wanting to get into modern wrestling, last year there was a trilogy of matches that was incredible. It is the Briscoe brothers versus FTR. They had 3 incredible matches. They had 2 regular tag team matches, one double dog collar match, which had a lot of blood, but they built it up. It was a great match. If you want to watch that, I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. Honor Club, which there's a free trial to that, I believe. It is incredible. It is what wrestling is supposed to be. Watch those 3 matches. If not, just watch the dog collar match. And to me, it is the closest thing to old Mid South wrestling that we have gotten in a long time. So check that match out.
Yeah. Josh, you have any recommendations for people, wrestling or
Um,
otherwise?
I'd say, and this will kind of tie into what you'll see on Friday and what we'll talk about next time, but I'd recommend, and you'll probably have to YouTube this as well. Maybe just type in, oh god, how would you even say it? WWE Bloodline Saga. So
Yeah.
there's this whole storyline called that's basically based around this family of this wrestling family, and they call themselves the Bloodline. So I'm gonna leave it at that. But it's by far the best thing in wrestling for the past like year plus.
Yeah,
When
two
you hear
years.
people talk about long term storytelling, like this is the way to do it. Like it started small and just kept expanding, expanding, expanding. It just recently like hit a breaking point at the Royal Rumble, and now we're kind of going down to the coming down to the end of it, but it's still like just as engaging and great. Like there's some
Hmm.
good to great matches involved in it, but it's more about the storytelling and the characters is what makes it good. And that's what, to me, what makes wrestling the greatest is when there's a great mix between story and in ring. Like I love in ring stuff, but if guys are just in there just having a match just to have a match, then it takes me out of it pretty quick.
And that story that Josh Ross is talking about, it started August 2020,
Yeah,
and it is still running, and it
it
is
doesn't seem like that long.
absolutely great. Yeah, man,
Yeah,
it's been
that's
almost 3 years.
that's kind of when
Wow.
Roman like won the belt for the first, or not the first time, but this most recent time, right?
Yeah, as a heel. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So the closest I have to a wrestling recommendation, comic book series, Do a Power Bomb. Not meant for the faint of heart.
I haven't
Not
read it
meant
before,
for children.
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's if you're easily offended as a Christian, don't read it. But God does show up as a wrestler at one point, so that's kind of fun. And of course,
Have you
guys.
seen Shirtless Bear Fighter?
No.
That's another. It's like an indie comic, but it's pretty funny. It's kind of like
Nice.
wrestling. Like this
Okay.
dude wrestles bears with no shirt on.
That just sounds random enough. I have to check that out.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you guys for joining me. Thank everybody for listening. If you want to see more of our stuff, you can go to systematicgeekology.org. We have all of our links and host tabs, everything over there. Of course, you can join the Facebook group, Priest of the Geeks. We do a lot of fun meme sharing and talks over there. And we need you all to do us one very important favor. And remember that we're all a chosen people, a geekdom of Priest.